Suburbs like this one are a nightmare. Seriously, unless you own a car, you're effectively trapped. Want to take your kid to school? Grab a jug of milk? Get to work? Your only real option is to get behind the wheel. And even if you decide to brave these sidewalkless streets on foot, the endless maze of cul-de-sacs and massively long blocks make it nearly impossible to get anywhere efficiently. It's a landscape built for cars, not people. But today, we're going to fix that. We're going to take this isolating, auto-oriented suburban landscape and transform it into a vibrant, highly livable community. We're talking quality multimodal transportation, diverse housing options, and local shops that people can actually walk to. And we're going to do all that while preserving the character of the neighborhood. This is my plan to retrofit Suburbia. I'm going to be upfront with you and say that I'm insanely excited about today's video. This is something I've been wanting to do for years. We're going to basically take this suburb and make it much less auto-oriented than it is right now. I'm going to be leveraging two resources. The first is a book called Retrofitting Suburbia by Ellen Dunham Jones and June Williamson. I love that it's highly visual. So if you're the kind of person who wants to see how a place used to look and what the plans for the future are, this book has that. It also tells you how communities have actually done this. Because coming up with a pretty plan is easy. The hard part is actually implementing it. Additionally, we're going to be leveraging my personal experience with a project like this. But we have a few things to do in between now and then, because I've come up with a 4-phase plan to accomplish this goal. Phase 1 will be improving street design. Phase 2 will be improving connectivity. Phase 3 will be adding transit. And then Phase 4 will be adjusting our land uses. So let's begin with improving our street design. And this is one of the things that I think would be easiest to accomplish. Basically, we're taking the existing right-of-way and modifying it. So starting out with this arterial that goes through the neighborhood, I want to take it from a highway and convert it into an urban road. Now, the way this would happen in the US is you would work with the Department of Transportation to come up with a geometry that would work well for the community. They would construct it and then hand it off to the community who would be responsible for maintaining that road from there on out. My guess would be that something similar happens in Canada, where if this were a provincial road, the province would upgrade it and then hand it off to the local municipality. So immediately what this does is narrow the road while also decreasing the roadway speed. So that makes this a safer road in general. I'm also going to remove some of the capacity here. And we'll add some street trees to reduce the urban heat island effect. So we'll once again use the drawbridge just because I like the way it looks, and boy, I made a mess. Now over here, I want to add a roundabout, and I want to do that for traffic calming purposes, as well as to improve safety. If you add a roundabout, your chance of a fatal collision here really declines. And that's because instead of head-on collisions, you end up with side swipes. So we're going to add a large roundabout right here. And this does encroach upon that Walmart sign, but I'm not overly concerned about that because I don't like this Walmart sign being here. I think I added one in an inappropriate location. They have a sign here, they have a sign right there, and they have a sign right there. They don't get this one. Goodbye, Walmart sign. Now, the reason I added the roundabout with the trees in the center is I want that visual disruption. As you're driving through here, if you can't see all the way through here, it feels like you have to slow down. Coming up to the next stretch of road, we're going to urbanize this as well. And while I could just use the normal 2-lane one-way road, I think we're going to make some adjustments to this. And basically, I want to remove the parking and narrow it up and add trees. And ultimately, what this does is slow down traffic. And I'm going to upgrade the entire road all the way back to this roundabout. The funny thing is, I called this a roundabout. It's not a roundabout. This is a mega intersection. Not anymore. Now it's a roundabout. In fact, I think we have more roundabouts to add. Another roundabout right here. It's a thing of beauty. And the next thing I want to do is take our collector through here and put this on a road diet. Now, basically what a road diet is reducing the capacity of a road. At the same time, you'll have to narrow up the lanes, which will slow down the speeds, and just in general, make the roads safer for pedestrians and cyclists. So in our case here, I'm going to remove the 2 middle lanes and replace them with a median. And in the median, I will add trees and a grassy terrace. Now in the real world, I'd probably want to maintain the right-of-way, and right now I'm a meter shy of that. However, if I make the sides 4 meters, I'll experience graphical corruption, so I'm just not going to do that. But just know that I want to. One of the drawbacks of what we've done though is if you come in from downtown and you live right here, you can't get to your house. So we have to fix that with roundabouts. And then I'm going to use the network tools to remove this node right here to clean up that abnormality that we have. Then I can use move it to clean this up once more and basically get the same geometry. I'm going to also add those crosswalks back because we want to encourage pedestrianism. And I'm going to basically go through every collector, and if I can fit a roundabout, I'm going to add it. Now, I basically added roundabouts everywhere except for locations like this, where these would be too close to one another or where the roundabout might encroach upon existing properties. That's always a consideration when you're designing and installing a roundabout. The other consideration would be this grade right here. And we've got some wacky stuff going on. And just removing that node immediately improves this. And then lastly, we're going to make what would be the most difficult change, and that's going to be adding sidewalks to every single street. Now, in reality, as the planner of this community, I'd likely need to go block by block, year after year, and try to get sidewalks on one side of the road and then the other, or maybe get a wholesale policy change at the city level and have it be a policy that sidewalks are installed on both sides whenever a road is reconstructed. But even in those instances, you can sometimes fail because politicians are people. And when you bump into your constituent at the grocery store and they say, I don't want a sidewalk, and they confront you, sometimes you cave. But New Banff is a place where people don't cave and we do the right thing. So I'm going to take these local roads, we're going to edit all of them, and we're going to add sidewalks. Now, the one thing that I will give the residents is I will keep this at 3.5 meters and it will be attached to the road, meaning that there's no grassy terrace in between the road and the sidewalk. The reason that this is a win for the resident is that the city still likely owns some right-of-way right here. They've just basically committed for 70 years that they're not going to use it. Because a sidewalk generally lasts at least 70 years, and the chance of the city deciding to move the sidewalk over a couple meters, very, very low. They're likely going to keep it where it is, which means that as the homeowner, you get to have a larger front yard. And as the Cities Skylines 2 player, because we used Road Builder, we've converted all of those all at once, which is super cool. So let's move on to phase 2, improving connectivity. Now, if adding sidewalks to a street was challenging, this is a gargantuan ask. And that's because we're going to be looking at 2 ways to improve connectivity. The first would be punching through cul-de-sacs to make local road connections. The second would be to actually add path connections to the end of cul-de-sacs to improve pedestrian connectivity. In either case, you're going to receive a lot of pushback unless, of course, the area is in a great deal of distress. And that's because most homeowners aren't going to want to sell their home for a road, nor are they going to want a whole bunch of pedestrians walking past their house if the city were to try to acquire an easement on the side of their property. But we're going to live in a world where this has happened. So here's what this could look like. We'll add a path right here, which will essentially turn this into park space. And then we would work with this homeowner to acquire an easement. And now what you've done is made it so that if you live right here and you're going to your friend's house over here, you can have a nice, easy walk instead of basically being required to drive all the way around here. Now, sometimes when you're platting a neighborhood like this, you can get these easements put in place before the home is ever built. This is something that I've required in the past, but here's the thing. Executing those easements and getting the path built after the fact can also be incredibly challenging. To try to address that, I'll add what we'll pretend are arborvitaes. I'll give this exact same treatment to most of the other cul-de-sacs over here. Now, as we work our way up here, I feel like the treatments have to get a bit different and a bit more extreme. So I want to punch through some roads here if at all possible. The main reason for that is we have incredibly long block lengths. So this right here is basically 3 blocks in one, and this one is basically 5. So if you were right here and you wanted to go over here, your trip is going to be incredibly circuitous. And considering we have a school route here, it really feels wrong that the block lengths are this long. If we want to encourage walking and bicycling, we need to have shorter blocks. So I'm going to imagine that this neighborhood has become distressed over the years, and as a result, we're able to acquire some properties, or perhaps we just use some eminent domain and acquire these properties. And you can start to imagine just how much a project like this could cost the city. Now, one of the ways that the city could potentially recoup this investment would be to sell some of these remnant parcels. And we'll imagine that they've done just that. We'll also plan for our preferred treatment right here, which is the roundabouts. I don't know that I love this Netherlands elementary school. It feels way too urban for this location. So I'm going to call a mulligan on that choice. And I'll go with an old favorite, the Southwestern Elementary School. This doesn't fit perfectly though, but I'm going to force it because I really want this here. Don't be like me, friends. Respect the topography. That was incredibly disrespectful. However, it does give us a bit of space for more housing, and this school can expand more, which I appreciate. Let's add on the arts and music building, 500 additional student capacity, and then we'll reserve these other 2 upgrades for if we need them in the future. Now I'll continue to add some paths over here. Now I think over here, I'm going to use a bit more eminent domain and basically turn this cul-de-sac into an eyebrow. And then as much as I'd love to add a roundabout right here, we've got this house where the roundabout would be, so we can't add that. Now I think right here, I'm going to pick my battles. Basically, I'm really interested in linking up this area to this area up here. So I'm going to probably punch this cul-de-sac through all the way up to here. I'm also going to link this neighborhood to this collector, and we'll likely link this connection through to the collector as well. So even though there are a couple of other spots like right here that I might like to make a connection, I'm going to target the most important ones. This is pretty steep, but I think that it's doable. We'll just have to add retaining walls near existing properties. And this seems like a fairly reasonable connection in my opinion, and it opens up a ton of developable space. However, I have room for a roundabout right here, so we're going to add it. And then in the spirit of picking my battles, I think there are 2 more places I'm going to punch through roads. Right here, we have a long block length once again and a roundabout. Same thing right here, incredibly long block length. And then for better or for worse, for the rest of these, we're just going to add some path connections. Next, I want to think about bikes. And this is a tough one because there's currently 0 bike infrastructure. And in reality, cyclists could use the paths that we put in, or they would be multi-use and that would just be signed that way. But in the game, they'd be twice as wide and kind of obnoxious. So we're not going to do that. What I'm going to do instead is add bike lanes to the collectors, which I know doesn't make this an all ages and abilities facility, but it does mean that someone who's a choice cyclist would at least have an option. And I think on the local roads, I want to take a look at traffic volumes. I'll add lanes if it seems necessary. Like right here, for instance, you can see that there's kind of heavy traffic volume, so the lane might be beneficial. And then I want to do something a little bit special over here. So I basically want to have a really nice bike facility along the tree line. And essentially what we've created right here is one of the highest quality pieces of bike infrastructure in the entire city. And maybe this starts to convert some of the neighborhood to be champions of bike infrastructure. Sometimes you just got to start somewhere. And then as I pull back and look at this, I think I'm going to make one more roadway connection. This is still a gigantic cul-de-sac. So we'll super node this, add our big roundabout once again, and greatly upset this entire neighborhood. They would not be happy to have this direct connection, even if they directly benefit from it. And that's because they'd likely make the argument that there's going to be a whole bunch of traffic driving into their neighborhood. I think it's probably overblown in terms of being a concern, but I totally would understand why they would feel that way. And to address those concerns, I'll increase the size of this roundabout, which will hopefully slow down traffic coming from this arterial. And ultimately, the main reason that I want to add this is connectivity, but it's also a public safety thing. I think that both could work in harmony to make this connection a reality. Now, we have a whole bunch more roadway connections to make over here near the Walmart, but I'm going to hold off on making those until we're actually redeveloping the Grayfield site. And instead, we'll move on to phase 3, transit improvements. I just want to cut in for a moment because it's wildly hot here today. I've actually been taking breaks to leave the sweltering heat of my production space just to cool off. And when it's this hot, the last thing I want to do is eat a hot meal. I want something refreshing, preferably cold, and thankfully, Factor has me covered. Factor delivers fresh, chef-crafted, and dietitian-approved meals straight to your doorstep. They've got these newly launched salads that both myself and my wife are obsessed with. Like, literally all we got in our last box was salads. And that's because they're hearty and delicious. My personal favorite is the buffalo chicken salad, but I've had them all at this point, and I can tell you I've enjoyed every single one of them. Now, if you do want something warm, they've got you covered there too. And best of all, no planning, no prep, and no cleanup. Everything is ready in just 2 minutes flat. I've personally been a subscriber for years, and I legitimately look forward to every single meal. Whether it's breakfast, lunch, or dinner, they've got it all, and it's all awesome. If you want to check it out for yourself, head to factor75.com or click on the link below and use code CityPlannerPlays FB50 to get 50% off plus free breakfast for 1 year. Huge thank you to longtime channel partner Factor for sponsoring another video. Now let's get back to Suburbia. Would you think that I'm crazy if I said that all of our plans for transit involved Walmart? We're actually going to do a lot here. Basically what I'm thinking is I want to bring light rail directly up to the Walmart and use it as the catalyst for redeveloping this area and basically creating a denser town center. So to do that, we're going to be crossing over our collector, running along the side of the river, and then linking up with our tram station down here and making a direct connection into the downtown area. Once we have that, we are going to have a bus route that meets up with the light rail stop and circulates through the neighborhood, providing a first and last mile connection. So let's begin with our tram stop, and I want to create the exact same sort of connection that we have in our streetcar suburb. To do that, we're going to place our tram station with the side platforms right here. This is a placeholder. I'm not 100% sure where this is going to go, but I know that it's going to be more or less this location. Now I want to elevate this thing so that we get over the top of this collector. And then I want to cross the stream. So now that I have this, I'm going to use network tools, which at this point, now when the video is out, it should be released, still in early access, but to the general public. I'll leave a link to it in the pinned comment. I'm going to use the connect tools. So I need to select the correct asset, which is the double tram track. And now I just select the ends here, and look at that magic. So right now I have bypass validation disabled. And if I deselect that, I can see if I'm actually having a problem. I am. There's a conflict with the Walmart sign. I'm not overly concerned about that. Let's just adjust the curvature here. That looks just about perfect to me, and we'll create the connection. Now I'm going to use network tools once again just to make sure that things are 100% perfect, because this looks a little bit steep, and I'll slope all the way back, get this to 3.8%. That's a thing of beauty. Now I'm going to take a step back and switch over to the other side. We're going to use the network tools mod in another unique way. We're going to use the parallel tool, and I basically want to parallel along the side of this road with a tram track. So I'm going to select the double tram track once again. I want to parallel the road basically from here to here. And it's already on the right side, but I could just slide this around if it's not on the right side. And then I'm going to just create the parallel network. This is super jank. I'm not going to worry about that. The only thing I want to worry about now is making sure that it's at grade. So I just used anarchy to force this to be a bridge, and then I remove the bridge. And now I'm just going to slope from here to here. That brings it to 0.3%. Now it should be easy enough just to make a connection between this road right here and this connection. And I think that looks pretty good. I'm a little bit concerned about this angle though. So I'm gonna use Node Controller to improve this. Now I need to link between here and here. I wanna do something crazy. I'm gonna give myself a guideline. And then I wanna link these two segments to the guide, because this right here should be doable. I think it's actually appropriate. Oh my goodness, that is awesome. That is awesome. We'll do the exact same thing over here. Oh my goodness, you can move the control point. I did not know that. Oh, that makes this so powerful. So you can grab that center node and just pull it. Oh my goodness. I'm never going to do this the way I was doing it before. Now, I believe this should just be a nice smooth connection. A big portion of this is going to be elevated. I think it's okay. It's rail. So at this point, we might as well just create our route. And for the time being, I'm just going to have this go from here to our downtown station and back. That's it. And then I've renamed this Walmart. I'm going to take the ticket price to 0, and they've assigned 5 vehicles here. We don't have 5. I think 2 should be sufficient, and we have enough capacity for that. Since it's the Walmart line, we'll make it blue. And would you look at this? We already have a healthy number of people coming over here to take the tram. It shows you that there was demand for this in this neighborhood. So now let's add our bus access, but we'll still begin with a nice shelter right here. Then throughout the entire neighborhood, we're just going to have regular stops. I think we'll have basically a clockwise loop. So we'll go from here, stop close to this neighborhood. Then from there, I'll add another stop close to this roundabout so we can provide access to the internals of this neighborhood. One right there as well. And then one final stop near the police station. Then we're going to loop back around. We'll stop in this neighborhood a few times. And then I'll create the route. We have this weird loop that I thought was going to work, but I don't need it. So instead of doing that, we'll just add a waypoint right there and then adjust the side of the road that our stop is on, add a crosswalk and call it a day. It's not perfect, but it's perfectly fine. Now for this route, we're going to call it the Walmart bus route. We'll drop the ticket price to 0, and then the number of vehicles, I'm going to drop this down to 2 as well. Because for the time being anyway, this is circulating around a gigantic single family neighborhood, there shouldn't be all that much demand for transit. Just reasonably, as this neighborhood currently sits, it really shouldn't be able to support any sort of fixed route transit. And that's because fixed route transit usually needs some kind of density, some sort of destination. Right now, we've got a destination, a transfer, and the Walmart, but really nothing else. So let's change that. For this final phase, there are really 2 distinct projects that we're going to be taking on. The biggest one is going to be taking the Walmart site, redeveloping it around the existing uses, and basically adding a bunch more density there, turning it into a town center that's walkable, vibrant, and a place that people would want to visit and live. The other project is going to be taking the existing neighborhoods and improving the land use mix, adding in some missing middle housing, adding in some commercial uses that people could walk to. I think I want to start there because it's kind of the minor project. And really what we've got to think about is what kinds of uses would be compatible. And if we're adding uses in places where, maybe you could inadvertently strode the road, what land uses are we actually placing there and where are we taking access from? So because of that, I'm going to be very particular with the land uses that I select. And this might not be the most inspiring design, but here's the thing. None of these buildings take access from the front, which means that we can add some parking in the rear, which would be expected out here. It is the suburbs after all. And then in between here, I'll add a bit of park space. And then for all of these homes right here, I want to make sure that we have a little bit of buffering. And that's pretty good in my opinion. The nice thing about this is this neighborhood still has access to these buildings with this pedestrian path. So they aren't just suffering from the externalities of these buildings. They're benefiting directly from them. Over in this neighborhood, I want to add a commercial option right over here. And I think the main thing for me is I want to keep this close to the bus stop, and I want to make sure it doesn't have a sea of parking. So something like this EU waterfront commercial, it is going to be just perfect. Just imagine being able to come here and have a restaurant that you could go to in your neighborhood if you want. So I'm going to do this in a couple more locations with similar sorts of assets, like this North American commercial low 4x4. And for this one, you can just imagine this being maybe a salon, a dentist, or a convenience store with some groceries. And for the neighborhood, this would be super valuable. But I don't want to just add places to shop. I want to also add a bit of missing middle housing. And for that, we're going to go with row homes. And because I want this to feel retrofitted, I think we're going to be using some of these, once again, the exact same Vancouver assets that we used in downtown. And there we go. That looks a ton better. And I thought about just spraying some trees through here to try to blend this, but I think sometimes you got to be a little bit more deliberate, and this looks a ton better as a result. Now, the location of this is really critical. I placed this on the collector. Adding this within a local road would upset a lot of people. It would make the commercial businesses probably not quite as viable. This would already be a challenging spot for them. They're really banking on the neighborhood, keeping them afloat. But placing them right here, for instance, not all that ideal, simply because of the traffic volumes. That said, I could for sure see adding some row homes back here. And I think that these look absolutely perfect right here. This is a context-sensitive solution to adding density to a suburban area. If you think about it, these are not looming over the single-family homes around them. So that makes it less likely that folks in the surrounding area are going to complain about it. But at the same time, we've taken what could have fit maybe 3 or 4 single-family homes and added 8 row homes. And because of that extra density and because the land value is cheaper out here, these would presumably be at a much lower price point than the single-family homes around it. In fact, we can check that. This is $77 per month in rent with $6 per month in upkeep. The single-family home is $75 per month in rent, but $84 per month in upkeep. So this is about half the price to live in, which is kind of wild if you think about it. So I want to take these 3 principles and apply them to the entire neighborhood. And I was able to serve every neighborhood with a little bit of something, but not necessarily everything everywhere. But still, I would think that the neighborhood is in a significantly better place than it was before. So let's take on our big project. But before we talk about this, I want to show you a project that I actually worked on in the real world. And for my capstone project in grad school, our goal was to take this mall, which was dying and the city had acquired, and come up with a plan to turn this into a town center. Or basically, a downtown for a suburb that didn't have one. But there were a few constraints. Number one, there's a bowling alley right here. This is going to remain, along with the JCPenney right here. Number two, we need to provide access to a transit facility, which we have right here. It's a commuter bus. And number three, we had to be sensitive to the views of downtown, which is directly south of us, downtown Denver. And then finally, we could not adjust the rights of way around this site, and we had to make it feel context sensitive. So it had to blend in with the existing surroundings and what was planned to be there in the future. This is the plan that we came up with. And I think for the most part, we met the goals with one exception. This is not exactly a context-sensitive design. I still remember the planner taking a look at that building in the back corner and kind of chuckling. And the main reason is it's way out of scale. That would basically be a 30-story tower in the middle of Suburbia. But beyond that, we met all the rest of the goals. But sadly, our plan was not adopted. But But I am happy to report that things have changed here a lot in the last 15 years. By 2012, the mall had been completely scraped. And as of today, we can start to see some development filling in. And the cool thing is that bowling alley and the JCPenney, they're still active in the site. This is that same JCPenney, but instead of being surrounded by a whole bunch of asphalt in a mall, it's got a whole bunch of mixed use around it. We've got a hotel, we've got some apartments. And if you're heading to JCPenney, this is where you park. In fact, there's actually a sky bridge linking the JCPenney to this parking ramp, and a nice pedestrian road in between the ramp and the JCPenney. And this parking is actually tucked behind a whole bunch of mixed use. In fact, from the street level right here, you'd never be able to tell that there's parking save for this sign and this sign right here. Coming around this side of the JCPenney, you can once again see that there's more mixed use. There's some plaza space right here and a theater. And honestly, this theater looks a heck of a lot like the asset in Cities Skylines 2. We might have to add that to our town center. So a couple of takeaways here. You can maintain some existing retail uses in the middle of one of these grayfield redevelopment sites. And if you take away that sea of asphalt parking, you can bring new uses right up to that old building. One thing you'll notice is no 20-story towers over here. That wasn't context sensitive or appropriate. But a 5/1, well, that makes sense. And then the other thing I'm guessing you're a little bit curious about is why there's still asphalt parking. Well, it's a perfectly fine placeholder use. As the land becomes more valuable here, you can develop structured parking. But for now, if you can reuse some asphalt or come up with a fairly basic parking lot, this is relatively inexpensive and still has utility. So conceptually, I want to do something very similar here. And where we begin is basically adding a street grid to this area. Now, so far, the things that I've done have been pretty basic, but what I'm about to do is going to be a little bit extreme. So basically, I want to find a way into the roundabout, and I think I want to connect up here as well. So we open up this land right here for development and bring all of these potential customers down into this space. And to make this connection happen, I just tried to respect the topography, so I'm following some contour lines. And for the most part, I feel like we've done a good job, except for right here, but a little slopey, and we're in good shape. And I had to take a couple of liberties here to make this look good, but ultimately Skylines 1 and 2 have never really handled terrain all that well. So I feel like it's okay to take a couple of liberties just to make this look good and to maintain your sanity. Next, I want to add that structured parking, and we'll go with the multi-level parking building. And I'll place that right there. I think I am going to leave some of the surface parking behind. And I'll also extend a normal city street in front of the Walmart, which will mean I need to make a couple of adjustments here. I'm gonna lead this road right up to the center of the Walmart, and it looks like it's a little bit off. I think I'm gonna fix that. Now, I decided to rotate the parking ramp so that I could hide the parking ramp. I think what I'm looking for ideally is something tall enough to hide this. And what that means is I'm probably looking at level 3 or level 5 urban promenades buildings. Those are the only buildings that are tall enough and narrow enough to be able to hide this. And I feel like that looks pretty good. Now, you might wonder, how would this happen? Why would Walmart agree to this? Well, Walmart now has a whole bunch of people living right by it who are probably going to go there to shop for groceries. But also, Walmart probably didn't pay for this parking ramp. The city probably agreed to acquire their parking lot and build the structured parking and let their customers park there for free. So Walmart made money on the property sale, got free structured parking that they never have to maintain, and they got a customer base right there. Sounds like a good deal to me. But this also probably happens when Walmart wants something. And at that point, that's when the city says, well, yes, however, how about this thing? And in a case like this, we're going to say that Walmart agrees. But let's do more. As my nod to Westminster, I'm going to add the Majestic Theater. Or at least I want to add the Majestic Theater, but this thing is massive. I think ideally I would have the street front up here, but it's not going to fit cleanly. At least not without eliminating that parking. Maybe we're okay with that. We have the parking from this. Maybe we add some off on the side. The other issue is that the asset doesn't quite fit cleanly. Just temporarily, I got rid of that road. Gonna remove some of the ugliness from the side. I don't think that we would allow that right there. And now that we bumped that over, it seems like the road is close. And sometimes close is gonna have to be good enough. I think that we can live with that. Maybe we can't live with that, but we can live with everything else. That's honestly not terrible. It's kind of a weird intersection right here, but I think it's totally doable. This is going to cause me to make one change over here though. We got rid of this road. I still want there to be some sort of a grid. It doesn't seem that extreme, and it shouldn't be. We're gonna fix it. And then I've rounded things out with a couple more building pads so we can fit one nice building right here, one right here, maybe some row homes right here, and then add our parking over here. So I want these to feel a bit more modern. And I was thinking about row homes, but honestly, maybe something like this would work well. And you know, the vibe is a little bit different around the Walmart, but I think it is a significantly better different. There's a lot more to do around there. There's a lot more to shop at around there. There's a lot more people living around there. Just in general, there's a lot more around there. Now, if you're wondering how I constructed this, I basically carefully selected the assets. Right here, we have some southwestern medium density row housing. We just have some medium density right here. Urban promenades wrapping the parking facility once again. The Majestic Theater right in the center. We've got some of Smiley's North American medium and mixed residential right here. And then Sully's beautiful brickworks back here. And ultimately, I feel like this has all really come together to create something that's really cohesive and just is really attractive. This, to me, makes this suburban environment still feel like a suburb, but have something more substantial right here in the shopping district. And I feel like because we didn't go crazy on the heights or spread the density into the neighborhoods, and because the buildings are really high quality, you probably wouldn't get a lot of pushback from the neighbors. They're just excited that they can now watch a movie, grab a cup of coffee, maybe go to a bookstore, as well as take light rail out of the neighborhood straight to downtown. The bus route drops people right off at the light rail station, and if you don't want to take the bus, you can always drive to this parking lot right here, which would act as a park and ride. But it seems like everyone wants to take the bus because we've got some problems. We're at 80% line utilization, and this stop alone has 187 people waiting. So I think I'm going to add 2 more vehicles here. And then while we're waiting for that to clear, let's see how we're doing with our light rail. 133 people here and 217 at our downtown stop. We're doing just fine. So let's see if we clear this queue. And it seems like that's done the trick. And there's one final thing that I want to do this area. I'm noticing that we're having some issues with the Walmart not having enough customers. And when I take a look at this, it's because it's selling recreation and they're only getting 2 customers per month. So I think we're going to change what they sell. And then I've locked that company and they are immediately profitable. So this was a good change. And I feel like to wrap things up, we need to take a look at the city and see how it's doing. And in particular, this neighborhood, which we are going to call Greenfield. You can see we've had a significant increase in the number of residents and households in this neighborhood, and there are a ton more employees here as well. And that's because we've added density and we've added a mix of uses. And I'll let you in on a secret. I don't know what the old numbers look like, but I'm guessing that the average wealth is a ton better and the rents have declined. And I don't even need to see the old numbers to know that because this is real world logic and it works in this game too. Traffic was a major issue last time. And it appears that we are still having a traffic issue right here. However, if you take a look at this neighborhood, the traffic problems are basically gone. And it's because we can do things within the neighborhood and we have transit to get out. I'm also noticing that we just climbed into the green once again, which is also awesome. And what this demonstrates to me is that good design is profitable. And ultimately, that's what I think that this is. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. Is it still far too suburban for many of you? Probably. But is this a neighborhood that you could stay in if you wanted to? I think so. And if you have to leave it for work, you now have options. You can bike, you can walk, you can take transit, or you can drive. And ultimately, I feel like providing a range of options is what a city's supposed to do. It's not supposed to dictate exactly what you have to do, but it gives you options. It lets you live the life that you want to live. And even if you want to live out here, even if you want to drive to work, I think that your life is objectively better by having the paths behind your house so you can go for a walk with your kids or walk one of your 5 dogs. And you now have a place to go and visit within your neighborhood. Those sorts of places matter. And some of the density that we added here, the context sensitive density, means that people would be able to live in this neighborhood for their entire life. They could grow up here, get their first apartment here, maybe buy a condo here or a townhome, and then buy a house if they want to down the line. And that's all because we're providing a range of housing options, not just one type. But what do you think of this neighborhood and what do you think of the changes? Let me know in the comments below. Now, as a bit of housekeeping, this episode took me a heck of a lot longer than it should, but my intention is to return to a more frequent upload schedule after this one. But until then, we're going to leave it here, and I really hope that you've enjoyed this one. If you did, please hit the like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. And I want to thank you so much for your time today. There's a million things you could have been doing. You decided to hang out with me and retrofit Suburbia, and for that, I appreciate you and I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.